Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome back to another episode of Getting Real with Bossy. I'm Kelly Bush. I'm here with
Kelly Metras.
And we're going to talk to you today about something we talk about a lot with ourselves, between ourselves and with our groups, Bossy and Bossing, about hiring and our teams and what that looks like, how to know when it needs to happen, and all the wonderful things that come along with being the boss.
Well, and I think there's various levels, right? So for some people, it's your first hire. You know, you might be a solopreneur. You can do everything yourself. You can save money that way. And then you find yourself working 8,000 hours a week. Or us, we have businesses that you can't run without employees.
Right.
So it's really hiring a new person or hiring a new position, right? Bringing on a manager when you've been doing it all yourself. So there's various levels. And I think that works for whether you're hiring a position that's already existed or hiring somebody for the first time ever.
Right.
There's a process we have to go through as business owners.
And one that we usually make a lot of mistakes at until we come up with what that process is.
Yes. And a lot of mistakes that when you're in a fire, because with hiring comes firing.
Oh, let's save that for the end. I'm not ready to cry yet, so let's put that at the end.
Both ways. Hi, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Kelly.
The host of Getting Real with Bossy, the real, raw, and honest podcast about small business ownership. With our experience, 9 businesses and over 25 years, we continue to bear it all and share what we wish we had known.
We move past the must be nices and start getting real.
Leave with another tool for the next time you feel alone on this journey. All right, we're good.
We put this out to the group. The question that we put out was, when do you hire your first employee and when did you know it was time? And I like that we did get different responses from people that already had businesses that needed to have employees. So I'm going to read a couple and we can go over them. This is one of my favorites. Last year, I hired my virtual assistant. This is a woman who had a business she was running by herself, and she's just started to get employees. This year, I hired out a designer because I couldn't keep up with the workload without sacrificing quality of work or my own sanity. I love it because it's so true, right?
Oh,
like there's,
God.
We talk about that, just like there's a level of quality we want to give. And if we can't do it because we're doing so much of the work ourselves, we have to let that go and bring in new people, which is also super scary because what if they're doing it differently than you?
Ooh, they're going to do it different than you.
Ooh, but I've been doing it and I know it's such a hard
But I
thing.
do it right.
Right. So I love it because she's recognizing that her sanity is incredibly important and we do need that balance, and at the level of quality, she wasn't able to keep that up. And that's so important. But we've brought people on because we just needed that help, but being able to trust that what they're doing is going to be okay. It may not be how we do it. You say this all the time. I think you say it better. So I'll let you kind of explain that, how you could get to that level of trust with letting go.
Well, it's really knowing they're going to get it done and they're going to get it done well. They're just not going to do it your way. And it's not saying that you give completely free rein to your employees. It's saying that every person reacts slightly different. It's like that running joke of like, you ask your husband to go do something and then you just go do it.
Yeah.
Well, because they need 5 minutes before they're going to transfer you, right? So it's like acknowledging that everyone's going to do things slightly different and having that understanding of like, this is the guideline. This is the ultimate what I expect to happen in these scenarios. I get to have this conversation this afternoon with somebody that forgot a couple of my guidelines. So when they come up, here's the guideline. The ultimate goal is the guest experience, right? Or your consumer or the product. So as long as they're getting that ultimate goal at the same level that you are, however they get there, it's probably going to be fine.
Right.
And then if it's not fine, you address it. You're
Right.
like, hey, by the way, that's not how we're going to deal with this next time. Next time we're going to do ABC instead. Like, this didn't work. But your sanity is worth it. And it's worth making a few mistakes along the way.
Absolutely. Pauly G, who we love, I'll read his. And he talks about this, so I don't mind saying his name. I needed to be in multiple places at once. Physically impossible, so I had to do it. Never looked back once. I realized how we could grow if I could become good at building a team, which is so important. being able to be a leader and not the one doing all the work is so important. Working on your business as opposed to working in your business is really the only way you're going to get the growth you need to be sustainable.
Well, and I think that that's a really important statement, right? Is that you have to be willing and able to change your job role. Because before you may have been the creator, right? You're creating the product. Polly was at every farm stand that existed in like
every event, radius. Every networking event he was at. He was everywhere.
But you can't make the sauce and sell the sauce and meet the people. And right. So when you become an employer, your new job is managing your employees. So I always said that my job before I had management was managing employees and guest relations, right? Like those are the two things I did the most. I mean, obviously I had to fill in and do employees' jobs when they were not able to do them. But like my overall job is managing employees and guests. When I took on management, my job became managing management. And that wasn't a job I knew, right? So now you have to be willing and able to learn a new job, which is another scary reason to not hire.
Right.
Because now I have to learn not only the legal stuff, because now you have mandates and you have legal HR law and you have all the things you have to keep up on, but you have to learn how to be a boss and not just a producer.
So hard. All right, let me do one more from the group, and I think this will launch us into some of the stuff that we want to tackle. A few months ago, I hired my COO. Oh, imagine. Oh, to have a COO. I knew it was time because I had gotten too comfortable. Usually when I get comfortable, it means it's time to do something scary so that I can grow. I love it because it's terrifying. This is, as we say all the time, when you start your own business, you're doing that thing that means the most to you, the thing you're most passionate about, the thing that you've probably been doing on some level most of your life. And to give up some of that control is so scary. So scary.
Because they're not going to do it the same way.
Yeah. So what does hiring look like for you? Like, how do you go about looking for a new employee? When do you personally know that it's time?
Well, usually at this point in where I'm at, it's because I've let someone go. So I'm hiring to fill a position. I just adjusted a role for somebody recently. So really, and I talk about this a lot, dumping everything that needs to get done, which is usually everything we're doing, right? Just brain dumping everything you do.
So you're talking about writing yourself a job description.
Yeah. And it's, sometimes it's everything from answering emails, bussing tables, making drinks, paying bills, doing the accounting, cash flow, like all of it. And then being like, okay, these are the things I need to do. And these are the things I can pay somebody to do that I don't need to be the person doing. For me personally, one thing that I don't hire out for, and I maybe should, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but it's just something personally. I do not hire out to answer reviews, answer emails, or do social media. Mostly because I want everything that's going directly to a guest to be my voice. And I know someone's going to do it perfectly fine, but I want it to be my voice. So that's something that stays on my job description that I could hire out for. Like, I know that, but that's something that means a lot to me. So I keep it on my job description and I try to find other things I can shift over. So when it comes to hiring or redefining a role, it's looking at what are the top things and what can I shift around? So I just had somebody, add to his role. So we shifted those responsibilities and we were like, okay, these are the things that we can shift over to you that we think that you're ready to take on. And then they come off of our plate a little bit.
Right.
But I could hire for the president of the United States. I have a process. I love, my husband answered on the group and was like, I had employees. And I was like,
I saw that.
So what's your process? What's your hiring process? Because he does not participate. He does not really participate in the hiring process. I put out ads on whatever, group you want to put your ads on, whatever app or website, blah, blah, blah. I make people engage with me before I invite them to interview. I actually have a whole process mentally that I don't read names. When I look at a resume, I skip, right down to the experience level. because I don't want that bias to kick in. I don't want to be biased. I remember back in the day being like, oh, I don't want to call this person because I'm embarrassed because I don't know how to pronounce their name.
Right.
So now I've just learned to be like, no, when I call this person, I'm going to ask them and I'll be like, am I saying your name right? When I interview in person, when somebody comes in for an interview, I ask them to tell me their name, spell their name, best contact info. So I have all that stuff like right at the top, and I actually like phonetically write it out. So if I want to call them back and I don't remember how to say it, because I end up it's COVID time era, so I don't interview quite as many people at once as I used to. And then I have an interview question template, so everybody gets the same questions depending on the job I'm interviewing for and the top things that I want to know about somebody. Because I also believe that I can teach you any job, but I can't teach you certain things personality-wise. I can't teach grit. I can't teach willingness to problem solve. I can't teach interpersonal dynamics, right? So like those are the things I'm really looking for when I'm talking to somebody. And then we talk about like, okay, these are the expectations of the job. Is this something you think you can do? Do you have any skill sets that match up? Yeah. So like I have what do you do?
I often have I try to have a conversation on the phone because I think it's important to just have that before I see somebody for some of the similar reasons. And also like, I feel like I get a lot more honesty when somebody doesn't have to look me in the face. Because once they come in and they're looking around, there's like context clues. They know what answers they should give. I know sometimes that they've never been in before, but they're like, oh, well, I love this. I'm like, you don't have to have come in before. Because like you said, I do feel like there's a lot of things I can teach. I can't teach intuition. I can't teach somebody to be able to, there's just some things, especially in the kitchen, that I cannot teach you to be, there's some things you got to know. You got to know how to look down a line and say, I need 16 chicken fingers for the next 7 order. There's just some things that I know it's just, I need somebody to know how to do it right away. But there's a lot of other stuff I can teach. So I'm not always looking for experience. And being in restaurant world, I always find this funny that we've hired, especially for Marshall Street, some people who have worked in some of the finest restaurants in the county, and they're always like, it'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, but there's certain things that are a little unique about us. We're next to, a music venue. When that lets out 60 hungry people will walk in all wanting food because they've got 15 minutes until the next band goes on. Like that is a very stressful thing. And you can make these amazing dishes, but if you can't fire out 40 tickets in 20 minutes time, which is doable with our menu, like it's going to be, I've seen more people walk out and I'm like, I can't teach some stuff. And there's some stuff that doesn't matter to me. Work fast food. I know you can work fast. I know you can work quick. I know you can work consistently. Sometimes that's what I'm looking for. So I think I like to talk to somebody over the phone before they come in and then just have them come in. If I feel like they gel, if I feel like our values are matching on some level, come in and work a shift and see how you get along with us. Because maybe it's not the right fit for you. You may not be the right fit for us. We may not be the right fit for you. I'd rather know by you coming in than me going through a whole process of onboarding and all of this stuff before you've actually stepped foot. So I like the working interview. It works better for me.
Yeah. You said a good thing. You mentioned values. I actually have recently integrated that into my whole process. So the very first question I ask people when they send in their resume on whatever app I'm using is I list off our values and what that means. And I ask them to pick the one that means the most to them. And I feel like just getting that engagement really sets us apart from the other people they're interviewing with.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, hey, like you actually want to hear my opinion on something. And then I go over it again in the interview process of like, hey, these are our values. Like, have you thought, like just like making sure they know. And one of ours that I really push is integrity. And I always define it as working within your own values. And that may be different than mine.
Right.
And understanding that if you get to a position where you're like, I don't feel right doing this, the expectation is you're going to come to us and tell us. Because we don't want you to ever feel like you're working outside of your own integrity. So it really starts an honest conversation, and the responses I get from people lead to more honest conversation. And that's something that I picked up through 10,000 Small Businesses was to really integrate, because we all come up with our values and we talk about that a lot, but how are we using them? Like, what's the point? Why have them?
Right.
So they're on my handbook. They're in my interview questions. Like,
That's so important. And that lets them know who they're dealing with, because there are a lot of people, there are so many different types of employers, some that are not there at all, some that they're going to have a lot of hands-on interactions with. So that them knowing that you are going to be upholding these values, and that is very important, and leading your business with your values and your morals is good for them to know. And then it's not a surprise. I think that's something I want to incorporate, because there are times where I've been like, whoa, that is so far off from what we like. How did this even happen? How did you not know this? So that's a great thing.
and if you have more reserved people applying, it kind of gives you, like, if you just kind of jump in and you're like, hey, let me tell you about us. Like, this is what we do. Like, how, then they're just kind of like, oh, well, there's something to talk about. It's not like a normal interview question.
Yeah.
These interviews are boring.
They really are. I'm writing this down. I'm taking my own notes for how to do things better.
So now we have employees. We're small business owners. That means we're going to have a small team. I mean, even if you have a team of, I have quite a few employees. We're down, obviously, post-pandemic from where we were. We were at about 49. We're at, I think, right around 30, which is large on some levels. I know over at Union, you have a much smaller team. And that leads to a family environment. It leads to hiring people's friends and family. You're like, oh, you have a job open. I have somebody my brother needs a job.
Right.
So not only are we small business families, but we a lot of times are families. And there are some definite pluses to minuses. There's a whole
It's hard.
level.
I always say, like, one of the benefits for working for a small business over, a corporate environment, like, you get that you get that family feeling. And there's some people that really thrive in those that aren't going to thrive sitting in a cubicle. Right. And I think, we can talk later about how we do things differently than, a corporate environment and corporate hiring and corporate teams. But Amy, my general manager, is one of 6 young ladies in her family, and we have had 5 of them. There's only one that hasn't worked for us at one point, which, most of the time is great. But then, when you have interpersonal, family drama, then it can be a thing. Luckily, we haven't had too much of that, but it can be.
I cannot imagine my girls working together, all of them. There's
no.
2.
Well, we have 3 right now. So we have 3 rock ladies here, and it's great. And it is great. But like 2 weeks ago was one of their birthday, and they all went out of town, and I was like, all right, well, I'll add those 3 jobs to my job description this week, which is fine. But there are those moments. But beyond that, you do get so invested. And I know that I really should work on my boundaries. I know that in general, my husband, same way. We get very close and invested in our employees and their families. We know their family, we know their kids, we know their parents, their customers. Sometimes I've babysat so many times. I've got employees' kids at my house all the time, or they're here in my office. I could show you, we've got like a little kid station set up, because that's who we are. And that's one of our values, is to be able to support your work-life balance. And sometimes that means you need help with your kids, but it also means there's times when you become really close and those relationships have to end, which is a really, really, really tough thing. It's something that has happened more than once, certainly recently. And it's very hard. It's hard when those business relationships have to end because of something bad that's happened. Sometimes it's just because it's a financial decision that has to be made, which is even harder to deal with sometimes. But it is very difficult. And there's times where I'm envious of those bigger corporate entities, or some of those small businesses that are owned by somebody who's got 8 other small businesses, and they have their management team and they're just not involved. And I can fire you. I don't really know you, but I know my kids' names. I know some of their teachers' names. I've talked to some of their teachers. I've picked them up from school. Like, it is tough. But that family environment really translates to hospitality so well. And having my customers know everybody that works from top to bottom. They know the cooks come out, they all talk. It's really beautiful. And I have to tell you this, I have an event tonight, which I'm super excited about. And this whole, like, we're just such a family. And we've got an event, which is a retirement party for a school that we used to work for. They're coming in, and one of my cooks is a former student, and he'll be able to come out and have that moment. And you have that when you know who your staff are. You know, he's going to be able to come out and see all these people and show them how far he's come. And that's what happens when you have that small family environment, because you know what's going on. I have my hand in every catering. I have my hand in every hiring. And that only happens when you really have that small family.
And it allows you to have honest conversations. We're going to talk about restorative discipline policies another time, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But for me, having that openness and that close communication right from the get-go allows me to feel comfortable pulling anybody into the office, whether I've worked with them very often or not, and be like, hey, like, this is what's happening. Like, I'm not going to hold back.
Right.
This is the expectation. This is the job you were hired for. Whether you've been with me for 10 years or you've been with me for 10 days, like, you're not reaching the expectations. Is there something going on? Is there a way we can support you? Because if not, we're going to have to end this.
Right.
You know, we've had those conversations, and it allows, because we're smaller, and I think that big business doesn't get, I'm not saying that, like, management and people that work together in a larger corporation aren't close with each other.
Right,
but
of course.
It's the hierarchy of everyone being close from top to bottom.
Right.
Where you have, like, sections of people who are close, but they may know the head boss or that boss's boss, but they're not ingrained in their lives. So yeah, it allows me to have those conversations, to be really honest. So when I do have to fire somebody that I love dearly as a human being, I'd be like, hey, you know, I've definitely fired people and let them stay at my house.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a personal thing. This is me running my business, and you're not holding up your side of the expectations. So I have to let you go. Like, no one's ever surprised.
Right.
When they get fired. They know what they're getting fired for. If they're surprised, then we've done something wrong. Then we missed the mark on making sure that we're being open and communicating. So I think that's a definite plus for small businesses, is that we have that ability to connect. So we have the ability to run our businesses in a possibly much better way than big business. There's no 3 strikes, you're out. You know, I remember when I had an employee that was like, oh, this is my 3rd time of getting in trouble, I'm fired. And I was like,
no.
What? Like, they were 3, and it was like spread out, and it was like 3 very different, you know, reasons. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I was like, I need to be clearer and letting everyone know, like, what our, you know, discipline policy is. You know, and that's what I reenacted. Okay, we're going to have a get together. We're going to meet. We're going to go over what our actual policy is. I'm going to rewrite how it's written in my handbook, let you know, like, we're always going to have, unless you do something detrimental and, like, unsafe or threatening, like, there's going to be steps. We're going to talk. We're going to figure it out if we can before you're terminated. Like, if you're late every day because of childcare, we're going to try really freaking hard to fix it before I fire you. Eventually, if we can't figure it out, you keep calling in because of childcare. You knew your schedule 2 weeks ago. Like, I've done everything I can. We're finally at a point where this isn't going to work. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to try ahead of time. It doesn't mean I'm not going to help watch your kids when I can. It doesn't mean that we're not going to give you all kinds of resources and be like, hey, these are some options for flexible childcare, which we've done a lot. And we've talked about some of these people on our podcasts. So yeah, I think small business owners have the benefit of that. So even the negatives, I think, are a positive.
True. That is true. So we talked about how, you know, we are different than corporate entities and bigger companies. One of the things that I think is so neat is when people are coming to us over other businesses, which I know are hiring and can pay so much more and have all of this list of benefits that there's just no way most small businesses can even tackle. And I think it's, for a lot of them, they are looking for that smaller family vibe for sure. But are there things that you do to kind of offset what some of the bigger companies do? I know one thing we do, especially it's great been great for our kitchens and actually our front of house too, is that every quarter they can get a new pair of shoes. So we have this deal with Shoes for Crews where we get a discount because we buy so many. And it's when they don't have to bring their home shoes into a greasy kitchen or behind the bar where something's going to inevitably get spilled on them, because that's just how life is. So we do things like that. They're like, really? I'm like, well, I can offer you, all of these other things. So you get telehealth and you get new shoes. So we try to be really creative about stuff like that.
Yeah, we did a lot before the pandemic. Over the years since then, the state has mandated a lot of the stuff we were offering anyways.
Right. You were ahead of the game with a lot of that, for sure.
But we had a lot of really long-term employees, and in our industry, that's not very common. So we wanted to make sure we were taking care of them as best we could. So we had a lot more. We recently got rid of our retirement plan. We don't want to waste our money, especially now that there is so much less of it. We're seeing we're offering these benefits, but nobody's using them, or they're not using them appropriately. We had a retirement plan, and essentially we were paying, 3% just to have a savings account for people to withdraw from, because they didn't understand the ramifications of withdrawing early. Right. So I'm like, not only this is actually a detriment. We used to, before Obamacare, we actually offered healthcare, but then our healthcare became a detriment.
Right.
So us offering healthcare kept people from being able to get Obamacare, and the healthcare we could offer was not as good.
Right.
Right. So realizing that just because you've always done it this way and trying to figure out what can we do. At one point in time, we offered childcare through Marvelous Minds, and then it wasn't getting used. So it's okay, well, I'm not going to continue to pay for that. So what else is it that you need right now? And just trying to really be cognizant of seeing patterns and being able to offer benefits that way, which I think is something that you don't get at corporate.
Right.
This is the package. This is what you get.
Job descriptions. Do you want to list your job descriptions?
What are you doing with all your free time since you've hired a team?
I know we'll get it from customers. I know you do too. If I have to cover a bar shift or something, especially during the day. At nighttime, I'm always around. People see me a lot more. But during the day, I never see you here. What do you do? I love that. People are like, I never see you. I'm like, I'm literally in this building. I'm usually in my office doing work. Or the other thing I love is when we are out, and this is the complete opposite. It's a Saturday night, just shut down. I'm like, well, no, I have employees. It's just very weird moments. People don't understand. And it's such the opposite. Either people think that I'm never here because they come in and they don't see me for the, 20 minutes that they're in grabbing a quick drink before they head back over to the amusement park. Or they think I have to be, on the floor 24/7. So interesting.
It's a cultural shift, I think, that certain generations are just not used to. Because I also think that there was a pride in being a workaholic, whether you owned your own business or you were just, working your way up in a corporation. Having to work all the time was a thing of pride for people. I'm like, no. I work a little bit of every hour of the day. But if I don't have to be filling a specific position, then I can do all of these things. I jotted down some of the things I do. I can do all of these things while my kids are at a lesson, right? So I'll take my kids to tennis and I sit in the parking lot for 2 hours. Then I run payroll and I make the schedule and I do my emails, and I have, thankfully from COVID, I have a whole setup that I found that worked, because I used to just work from waiting rooms. And now I have a whole setup. I turn my seat in my car, I lay it flat, I have a whole thing. And then it just becomes my office for 2 hours. That's the best part of being a small business owner, is having that flexibility, which sometimes means I have to work at 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes means I'm working from the tennis parking lot.
Yeah, I get a lot of work done from my car as well.
I'm going to pause for a second, because speaking of children, I can't tell if they're knocking. Are you knocking? Hello? Hello? What do you need? Here, take this. That wasn't an emergency. Go. I don't know if you want to cut that or keep it.
No, I think keeping. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's perfect timing.
If it's an emergency knock, and I was like, I hear fag knocking coming from the door. She was thirsty.
Well, that's, yeah.
So what are some of the things on your job description now?
It's changing because I had to make a decision and make a shift in some people's roles. And now I'm needing to do a little bit more out front than normal. So right now it's a little off, and just one quick thing before I say this, because one thing that you brought up that made me think about like this cultural thing and like back in the 80s, 90s, I mean, being a bar or restaurant owner was a much different job then. You know,
Yes.
You could just run the business and you could do it from the bar, and that's just completely different now. And I think that's definitely something worth noting, that what we have to do is so much more, because now I am the social media manager. I am the content creator. I am the PR manager. Because for things like you say with reviews and stuff, there are great companies that go out there and they'll answer every review fast and they'll use all those SEO words, but people know my voice because they know me, because I am in my business a lot. People know your voice, and there's no way that a company is going to really be able to replicate that. They'll do a lot more great work with SEO and words, putting specific words in than I'm ever going to do. But people know my voice, and that's important for me to be that PR manager. And accountant, bookkeeping, there are a lot of people that hire that out, and that's great and that makes sense. But for me, especially in our industry, especially post-COVID, pre-COVID, whatever part we're in with COVID,
the not recession,
right? I need to know
the not recession.
It's very good, because I do have managers that do a lot of that do the scheduling, they do the ordering. I need to know where money is at all times, because I've got a lot of different accounts where things have to be sometimes shuffled around. I don't just keep hundreds of thousands of dollars in my checking account. So it's very important for me to know where my money is every day. So I do all of the bookkeeping. It's something that I'm probably always going to do, even if the world turns around and people are eating out 3 times a week, 4 times a week like they used to. Payroll, I do payroll. There's people that put payroll out to other people, and it's something I like to have my eye on, because if I'm going, wow, we only made this amount and our payroll is now 80% of our sales, I want to know, and I want to be on top of that. I don't want to just find out when I do my monthly report at the end of the month. So those are the main things, and all the marketing. I think there's a lot that we're doing with kind of rebranding a little bit. So a lot of marketing needs to be happening, especially for the union right now. So it is a whole new marketing campaign, and that is a whole other job. And staff are great about, doing posts now. And we've gotten to the point where we're all kind of on the same page about what our message is, but it's still a lot of work. And I have to market a whole new area of my business that we haven't really been promoting before. So that's time. And for my brain that doesn't always work that way, I really have to sit and figure that stuff out.
I think one of the hardest things I've learned is that for a lot of my job responsibilities, I need that time. Mm-hmm. And I think I've talked about this on other episodes, whether it's taking a walk, taking a jog, laying on my floor, just flat on my back, sitting in my car. Sometimes you just need to have everything else stop and not be, if I'm in my house, I'm too distracted. If I'm at work, too distracted, and just have that time to creatively problem solve and develop those strategies and ideas for how you want to achieve the next level. But I can't do it when I'm doing everything else. Mm-hmm. Physically can't.
You can't. And getting out of my element is the best way to kind of Don and I just talked about this morning as I was getting up and he was going to bed. There are some things that we need to really take a look at. Some of our numbers are off. Some of what we're spending is weird, and we have to kind of do it, but there's no time ever. There's just no time ever to do it. I'm we need to book an overnight somewhere, and no phones, no nothing, and really sit and really be there with each other and having these conversations that we're not going to get interrupted with. There's always interruptions. Doesn't matter. Home, here, work, whatever. It doesn't, even going out for a walk, we'll run into somebody, and then that's a whole other distraction. I'm oh no, this is not, we did that one day. We went up to Cobb's Hill, and I'm run into 6 people we know. I'm I'm not getting the desired outcome we need right now, because now we're just socializing.
No, I highly recommend the woods behind my house.
I love those woods.
There's hardly anybody. There's hardly any. And if they are there, they're usually jogging and shit, so they don't want to talk.
Right. No, that's a great trail.
And just being like the public face, right? So whether I'm there or not, I'm still the public face. So you still have to try to get people to engage. So it might be, industry associations. I know we talk a lot about that and how important that is for us and how much comfort that's given us over the years. Networking, really finding new opportunities to partner with people, to really bring in different ideas, right? So we're not comfortable. So we're constantly trying to engage in new ways, which is exhausting. Because it's like, I don't have to be to work and I don't have to be at home. So I'm going to go to a networking event. Can I just go lay in my car?
Right. Can that be my networking?
And then managing all of your staff, whether it's, performance reviews, employee benefits, HR requirements, their general needs of the day. I get to have multiple meetings after this with staff.
Yeah, it just never stops. And I feel like we're just on an eternal pivot for the rest of the foreseeable future.
No, somebody told me it was a 5-year process. So this is it.
All right. Well, that was me.
Halfway through, we got like 6 months left, Kelly. That's all I got.
I know.
I have been living on this. Somebody told me it was going to be a 5-year process.
I did. And people made fun of me for that. And they're like, okay, it'll be like a month. I'm like, 5 years. God, I hope I'm right about that. But I just think like the idea of just doing the same thing that you're doing used to actually somewhat work in our industry. People really wanted that consistency. And now they're just looking for new opportunities. Right. And you got to keep changing
spans. Do you remember when they used to make fun of our generation? I think they called us like the Sesame Street attention span. Like they were like, oh, you don't have an attention span because of Sesame Street.
Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah. I have a great attention span. Thank you very much. Comparatively.
Right.
And then there's the emergency management. It's like as soon as I think I have time to figure out where my money's going and why it's off, because that's what I've also been working on the past couple of weeks, every time I can, just like really deep diving and like labeling and going through my books and just trying to really like deep dive into what's getting spent where and why. There's an emergency, whether it's somebody not showing up to work or a freezer failing and trying to figure out where you're going to put your food before it goes bad, paying to get it fixed or buying a new one and then something else goes. Or
I don't know if you remember Monday at our we were just at an event together and doing some co-working while we had downtime at the event that we were running, because that's what life is as a small business entrepreneur. You work when you can. And I was like, things are looking good. Things are going in a good direction. Look at all these margins. We're close. We're close. And Amy, my manager, sent Don and I a video of raining in our garage, which is where all of our food is kept, like all of our coolers. Everything is out in that garage space. And I was like, okay, well, naturally, we need a new roof now. Because that's
why not?
Because that's how this is going to go. Because things are like slowly starting to make sense, and now I have to put on I don't even know what roofs cost now. This is a big building.
Do it yourself? I think you should just do it yourself.
Okay.
I learned how to reline a pool last
weekend. You did,
and I think you could do it.
Okay.
I think you and Don could do it.
All right.
The time it takes just to hire somebody to get them to come out, just to ghost you, it's going to be more stressful than the stress of learning how to re-roof your building.
I mean, I see these tin ceiling or these tin roofs everywhere. Can I just buy tin and just nail it on? I feel like it should be that easy.
You're in the rustic, lakeside community.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'll start. You know what? That's what YouTube was invented for. Thank you. Because Don's a little bit scared of heights, so it's going to be me up there. And I don't mind. I'll do hard work. I don't mind it. It's just, yeah. But yeah, that was like the second you feel like things might be okay, something happens.
And that's why you need to have a good team, so that you have people to fall back on, because you cannot do all of the things and respond to all of the things.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered hiring.
Yeah.
Job descriptions, sanity, firing a little bit.
I think this is something we can talk about forever. I would really love to hear what our listeners do, if they do things differently, if they learn things from us today. If they have advice, we would love to hear it, but I'm always interested in how people handle their hiring process and managing their team.
And I'm always looking for new ways to do it.
Yep.
Because you don't want to
Absolutely.
get comfortable. And I want to know if Magnus hired his assistant.
We got to follow up with that for sure.
We got to follow up and find out, and we'll share with everybody on social.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I think the next time we get together, we'll talk a little bit more about managing those teams and employing some restorative practices and making that work, or how that works. Sometimes it doesn't. I would love to know how to restorative justice my customers sometimes. But that's a whole other topic. We'll save for another day. So yeah, write in bossyrock at gmail.com, ROC. We'd love to hear from you and what you're doing and how you're running your businesses.
Yes, and be bold.
Be brave.
Be the boss.